I was chatting with Pete yesterday, and it almost sounds like he's whispering. And I mean, I get it, like, not everybody's like super energetic, but you don't have to be energetic to talk loud. You can talk loud and super calm. It's just the decibels of your voice. The louder you are, the more excited you sound, so just do that. But I was just going to talk about like a few ways I reset and a few other things, just because I know it's getting later in the summer, people get tired. So if you guys are getting exhausted, like a simple one that Dan always taught me was just to go back and look at my customers. Now, a lot of times, I can't even remember the names of my customers and put them to the faces just because I forget them right when I leave. But what I've been doing instead is kind of just thinking about, like, forget the name, it doesn't matter. Just remember an interaction you had with a customer that was fun, regardless if it was a sale or not. Just think about, like, if you had to think of like the most fun times you had while you were working, what would those have been? Just like regardless if it was a sale or not. Like, I remember one time I was with Grady. I was helping him out one day, and we were working with a Mexican guy, and we were just talking to him forever. I mean, we ended up. I think you sold him, right?
Yeah, we sold him.
Yeah, we sold him. But I mean, we were with him for like an hour, just trying to get him to get it, and it was like full pain in the butt. But by the end of it, like, we were just kind of joking around, chatting it up after the sale, just like hanging out with him. And he had this Hummer, and Ronnie was talking about how he was looking at getting a car or a Hummer or something like that. And so he tossed us the keys, and he's like, "Yeah, you guys can just go take it for a spin." And so we're like, "All right." And so we're like, "Come on." He's like, "No, you guys go. You don't need me." So he just gave us the keys, and we got to go drive around. So like just like things like that.
For a Hummer?
Yeah. Like we were just driving his car around, and we were like listening to Mexican music. He's like blasting it from his phone somehow, and just like all the neighbors are looking at us, and like we're driving past.
I thought you stole his car.
That's exactly what it was.
It's like when you rode that horse and
Yeah, last year I was working.
I remember that.
I remember that.
And then there was these people that just had a horse in the middle of like in the town, and I don't even know why the hell it was like in the middle of like a normal neighborhood. They had a horse, and so they said they needed their horse to walk. So they were like, I had gotten dropped off, and Dan was like, "Don't go talk to them," but I was like, I have to go talk to them. So I ended up going to talk to them, and they're like, "Yeah, we've been riding our horse, but he still needs some more walking. So I mean, if you want to just go walk around the neighborhood." And so I was just riding a horse around like the streets, just like made no sense. Like, what the hell's going on?
Farm in 30 miles.
Yeah, but it was scary. It was scary, but yeah.
For 30 miles.
It was.
You're high up in the air.
Yeah, and there was like a ditch in the ground, and he was like, "Yeah, just jump it, you'll be fine." And I'm like, "Absolutely not." I'm like trying to get the horse to go around it. I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but I was like trying to like yank his mouth, like. But just like things like that, just like the most stupid stuff. It makes no sense how I even get myself in that situation, but just fun things like that that make the job worth it. But yeah, so just make sure you guys are resetting. Think about like the fun times you had. The one thing that Johnny said was, I know Grady always buys Starburst whenever he's working, so eat a Starburst, help you reset. Every time a bad interaction, eat a Starburst, boost your serotonin. And then another thing I like to do is just kind of approach the neighbor. I just started doing this myself. I didn't think I really learned it from anybody, but just like if I'm getting like a bunch of bad interactions on a street, and I'll get like halfway to the street, I kind of feel like when I go to the next neighbor, I'm like, because I'm next to that bad energy, I still have bad energy and I'm pissed off. So what I'll do is I'll just walk to the very other end of the street and then hit it from that side back to the middle. Just because I feel like I'm bad. I don't know, it just might be in my head that whenever I'm talking to the neighbor, I feel like this asshole's still staring at me and it's just pissing me off. Like, I can still feel the energy of like, I hate this guy. I don't even want to be here. But when I move across and I can't even see his house anymore, and then I start hitting it, then I can start building traction on that side of the street. I'm like, oh wow, the right side of the street's way better than the left side. And then by the time I get to the middle, I'm like, screw you, I gotta deal on that side. So I just like going to the other side. I don't know, it it might be a placebo, but just getting away from the bad interaction that you had and hitting it from a different angle helps me out. So
I think also, like, if you do have a bad interaction, for me, something that I'll do is I'll try to sell somebody that's right around them really hard. And so then that way they have to like look at the ABT sign every single day. And it's just like, they have to go out and go to work.
Dude, yeah, that's so funny. I do the same thing. Like if someone's rude to me, I go across the street and I'm like guns blazing, try and sell that neighbor. Like so they come out every day.
They think of you every day. Every single day.
Sign he was talking about.
Yeah.
He scammed him for sure.
Well, the best part is when you keep going back to like get water and they're outside, and you're like wave at them like this, and they hate you, and you're like.
So so make sure you tell the neighbors because that'll piss them off for sure.
I did this guy threatened to call the cops on me, screamed at me, like full cussed me out, said, "You stand right there, I'm calling the police right now, you little fucker!" Like started going crazy. 1, 2, 3, all 3 neighbors around him, and I was like, it was so good, bro. And he saw all the technicians out there, and like he like was looking at me through the window. I caught him a couple times. That was all 3 neighbors.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it was the day I sold 4 in Gladstone. It was like 1, 2, 3, and then like 4 just up the street. And it was all around that guy.
That's
so
wonderful.
dude.
Yeah, tell the neighbors. But another thing is just take advantage of the time whenever you're having a conversation. Like I think it was Monday, the first door I knocked, it was a renter, and as I'm like pitching her, the landlord's pulling in. So I was gonna go try and get him because he owned it was like a property, but he had like 3 houses on it. He had kind of like, it was like almost like a compound. So I went to go talk to him, and I tried to pitch him, but he wouldn't get it. But then I kind of just started chatting to him. What was I talking to him about? I was talking to him about, he had worked for ADT. And he was like, "Who do you work for?" I was like, "ADT." He said, "No, who do you work for?" I was like, "ADT." He's like, "No, like, you said you're an authorized dealer." I'm like, "Oh." I didn't think he knew what that was. And so he was like, I was like, "I work for Safe Street." And he was like, "Oh, I used to work for something like that." And I was like, "It's like Safe something." I'm like, "Was it Safe Haven?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's what I used to work for." And he said his buddy owned it, and then he used to knock for like Protection 1 or something. But anyway, I just started chatting to him about it and kind of just getting some information. And I don't know, it really benefited me too much, besides the fact that I knew him and I knew a lot about him. So whenever I went to go talk to the neighbors, like whenever I do go name drop him, it feels like I really know him. I can be like, "Oh yeah, he owns all those houses, he's been there for X amount of years, he does this for a living." Like, although it has nothing to do with like me pitching him, all that information about that guy will help me sell the neighbors because they feel like I'm really making relationships with their neighbors, which makes me feel like we can build a relationship. It makes me more trustworthy. So make sure you are just having conversations, because regardless if it's about the job, you're going to know more about the person. And when you do learn more about the person, they're more likely to give you information about the neighborhood. They're more likely to tell you about crime. Because typically, if you go up to somebody and they're not interested, and then you ask them about crime, they're not going to tell you anything.
Right.
Because they don't want to trap themselves into be like, "Oh, well, I'm an idiot. I know about crime, but I'm not going to get the system." So they won't tell you anything, or they just don't trust you. So just by having a conversation that has nothing to do with the job, it'll allow you to do better just by gathering nonsense information. But yeah, so. It helps you get information, and then also gives your mind a break, so you're pitching all day. When you find that one customer that's going to talk to you, just kind of soak it in, use that as a break. So that way, because typically if you go take a break, you're going to go sit down, like you're not going to stand back up. So use the time where you're actually working to take your breaks, because it's just relaxing, and it's the funnest part of the job, is just talking about random stuff. So, and then another thing I want to talk about is just being attentive as opposed to working in like autopilot. Because everybody knows the line, so it's not hard to go up, and like I could probably say the pitch while I'm sleeping. I probably do. So it's not like hard to just go out there and pitch and then convince yourself that you're working. But like pitching in autopilot and pitching attentively, pitching in autopilot isn't working. anybody can go up and say words. Like, if you're not focused with 100%, then you're not working. Like I can go up and knock doors. Like all last week I did awful. That's just because like I wasn't really focused. I was on my phone a lot in between the doors, and I'm knocking, and so like my energy comes off wrong. I don't come off with like the right energy. I'm not picking up key things. But I'm still saying the same lines I was yesterday, but I ran 4 credits yesterday and passed 4 credits. All last week, I don't even know if I ran that many credits, so just make sure. But your brain will operate in 2 ways: autopilot, which is just working without being attentive and putting your full mind into the job, or like a direct mode where you are actively in the moment and controlling what you're thinking about. You can either repeat the things you're doing, good or bad, but if you want a different result, you need to constantly be evolving your thoughts and, more importantly, the action following the thought. So just being a deliberate thinker is a skill that very people don't just wake up being successful at. A lot of like successful people, like they failed a lot of times and they have to actively tell themselves like, oh crap, I'm being lazy right now. Oh, I'm not doing this right, or I'm not doing that right. You have to be careful because you don't want to like only talk bad, but just notice the times where you're not doing what you could be doing, and the more and more you start to notice them, the more and more likely you'll start to feel bad about it. It's like almost like God. Like the more and more you start attributing things to God, like oh that's a blessing, that's a blessing, that's a blessing, the more and more likely you're gonna see it. Same thing with this. Like the more and more you attribute like your success to changing the small actions, the more and more you'll see how many mistakes you actually are making, because you're like, wow, I can improve here, I can improve here. You can improve so many different levels. Like it's literally the same thing. So, but yeah, doing a mindset reset isn't an event. It's a process pretty similar to when you go to the gym. When you go to the gym, one day you feel super pumped and you are ready to go, but once you stop going, you fall back in the same like, oh, I don't feel like going to do that today. So like. You have to, it's a lot easier to get myself to go to the gym when I've gone to the gym 5 days before, as opposed to somebody who has skipped a month and then try to go back into the gym. Like it's the same action of just hopping in the car and driving, but the process that goes on in your head is a lot different because it's like, oh, that's way harder, but in reality it's not that hard, you just go. And then the more and more you do it, the easier it keeps getting to improve on that. So just really the key part is just being attentive in what you're doing wrong, and the small things that you can improve, because it'll really just open up your mind to like, wow, I can improve in so many places, and wow, I've been doing like a lot of things wrong that on the face of it looks like you're doing the same as everybody else, but in reality it's not the same. Negative self-talk is a part of the autopilot mindset, so it's almost like encoded in our brain is self-doubt. Like, so when you're walking from door to door, like nobody wants to think negative thoughts, but it's just natural to think negative thoughts about yourself. Like when you're in the gym, like Zach was working out today, and he was like, "Damn, my shoulders look good." And then we walked into another room, and he's like, "Dude, I don't think my shoulders are as big as they used to be." but it's just like your natural like negative thought. Like Zach's way bigger than he was last year, and like if you look at pictures, it's obvious, but you're still going to tell yourself negative things, which isn't a good thing, but I mean, it obviously helps you to want to keep working out, but like, your mind's always going to naturally go in a negative mode, so you have to actively be thinking the opposite. It's not just like your autopilot's never going to be like, oh, I'm doing good, I'm doing a great day. You have to actively think about these things, like, oh, I did that good, I did that good, because if you're not actively trying to think of the good things, you're automatically going to think of the negative ones. So.
That's a survival instinct. Yeah, that's how you don't die in the wild. Because when things are weird, you point them out.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yes, sir.
We're not dying. It's okay.
And then everybody knows they need to make changes and everyone knows what their goals are in life, but as soon as you start thinking about the change you need to make, you start ruining it with negative thoughts and excuses of why it's not going to work or happen. If you constantly allow your mind to default and autopilot constant negative thoughts, like I'm out of shape, I'm a loser, I can't do this, etc., it's going to just become a part of your natural way of thinking, and it's just going to strengthen the negative thoughts as opposed to strengthening the positive thoughts. Like, your mind is the same thing, it's a muscle, it's just like working out your arms. Like, there's no reason, like you literally just go to the gym every day, and you go from lifting 5 pounds to 50 pounds. It's the same thing with your mind. Like the weight still, it feels as heavy as when I was lifting 5 pounds as when I'm lifting 50 pounds. But it's just because I've done it over and again that like the 50 pounds feels as easy. But the 5 pounds still felt as hard as the 50. So it's like the same thing with the good and negative thoughts. Like it's gonna get easier and easier, even though you're fighting harder battles in your head. It's gonna feel just as easy as it was when you first fought them, just because you've practiced so much. So just practice having good thoughts. But yeah, just make sure you're constantly fighting the thoughts as soon as they're popping up in your head, and immediately tell yourself the opposite. So that positive thinking becomes your default way of thinking. But that's really all I wanted to talk about, is kind of just making sure you guys are actively like fighting negative mindset. But does anybody have any ways that they do? No?
It's never not going to be hard though.
That's the new way.
Yeah, it's never not going to be hard. Like
That's what I'm saying. Like
exactly. Like even if you're doing 5 pounds, like when you first start, that's going to be hard. Like when you first start the job, you're going to have like level of thoughts that you're dealing with that are going to be hard. But hopefully all the time you have negative thoughts and things that are hard. But hopefully they're just like different. If you're ever complacent, then it probably means you're not leveling up. Like if you're never going through hard stuff, you're never dealing with negativity or
you're not lifting enough weight.
Exactly. Like you're not like, oh, you've never dealt with a cancer before. You've probably never signed up enough accounts. Like you've never had a bad account. Like okay, you've never pushed a hard account through. Like it's like okay, like when you first start, there's going to be tough things you have to deal with. But if you never deal with tough things, it means you're never leveling up. It means you're never pushing harder weight. You're never going to failure. You're never challenging yourself. You're never going outside of your limits. So
the job should always be like almost.
Life should always be tough.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
Brady's an example. When he was selling 400, he would call Chittix all the time, talking about like complaining about having to go to work, wanting to go home. Selling 3, 4 in a day, 20 every week, right? Same exact thing that we're going through, right?
Yeah.
But he's just learned and built that resiliency to where that's his pushing weight feels like 400 counts. Ours feels like 30 accounts, 40 accounts, right?
But it's
the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you go through that struggle long enough, you can start pushing more weight. You can start selling more accounts, and it just keeps.
You see guys in the gym, they've been working out for a long time, they'll throw around the hundreds, they're going until they can't do anything more. And you have a guy that comes in, he's doing 20 pounds, he's going until he can't do any more. So each of us has our own things that we're doing, but we all want to be pushing to a failure. And if you're not pushing to a failure, then you're a failure. Complacent. Yeah, you're a failure.
You don't see bodybuilders lifting 20 pounds. It's because they're pushing the hundreds.
Yeah. Exactly.
But at one point they were pushing 20 pounds.
Exactly.
The struggle was the same the whole time, but it's easier to push.
Your challenge is just evolved, they don't go away. Yeah, your challenge is just evolved, they never go away.
Right, but yeah, that's all I want to talk about, so.
That's what I need to do.
Alright, Brian, you got the prayer for us?
Pray so.
All right. Lord, bless this day to be beautiful for all of us here. Lord, allow us to transition easily and keep us cool out here today. Keep a cloud cover for us. Keep us hydrated out here. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Let's go.